So just before going to start today's session, first briefly we discussed, or yesterday's session, last session. Okay. So yesterday we discussed about what? IO package we discussed. So mainly there are two types of data is it. One is character type of data and non-character type of data. So next, string buffer and string builder. We discussed what is the difference between string buffer and string builder. Next, we started interfaces concept. We started. Next, string tokenizer we discussed. So yesterday finally again, so we started the discussion. What is the difference between interface and abstract class? Okay. So can you tell me what are the difference between the interface and abstract class? Interface and abstract class. Okay. So when we had to go for interface and when we had to go for abstract class, first of all. If you don't know the implementation, if you don't know the complete implementation, or some other wants to provide the implementation, then completely go for interface. Okay. So best example I told you, right? Arithmetic operations. Let us say I'm a project lead. One of my junior can do all these things like arithmetic, like adding operations, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So I know my junior can do all these things. So just what I will do is I'll create an interface. I'll create an interface and I'll give that interface to my junior. So he has to provide the implementation for. He has to provide the implementation for all the methods what is specified. Okay. If other wants to provide the implementation, okay, then go for interface. Others in completely. If some other wants to provide the implementation, will go for interface. Abstract class in the sense, some part of the functionality will implement some part of the functionality, and some part of the functionality some others will implement. So at that time, we'll go for abstract class. So technically, to say this one, interface contains only abstract methods. Interface contains only abstract methods. Of course, by default, the access specifier and access modifier for this method is public and abstract. But whereas abstract contains what? Abstract methods and non-abstract method. It contains abstract and non-abstract methods. Next, interface. So use implements keyword. Next, extends. Okay, next. So can implement. We can implement number of interfaces, whereas extends only one class. So you can extend only one class, whereas interface you can provide the implementation for the n number of methods. You can implement number of interfaces. It's not no of interfaces. It's what? It's number of interfaces. You can provide the implementation for n number of interfaces, but when it comes to abstract, you can provide the implementation. You can extend only one class. Next. So can you apply modifiers for the interface methods? Like we have different modifiers are there, like static, final. Okay. So by default, interface contains what? Static methods. Interface supports static. Interface will not allow static in the sense it will allow other things. Synchronize it will allow. So will not allow the access modifiers. will not allow the access modifiers except 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 abstract. Except what? Abstract. So there are, we have a few other things are there like final. We cannot declare it final. Next. Any other modifiers? Native is there. Okay. So shall we test native? Can we apply for interface method? A static we can apply for interface method. So have you tested? Okay. So as per my experience, you can by default every interface is having the public and abstract methods. It will allow what? Only public and abstract. So next, whereas abstract class, so it will allow access specifiers, all the access specifiers and access modifiers. And even in case of interface, can we apply with private access specifier? Private or protected? So can you apply? No, it will not allow. But whereas abstract classes, it will allow. Next, can you create an object for interface? Can we create an object for the interface? So generally, why we are creating an object? To access the data and the methods of a class. The interface contain nothing, doesn't contain any data and the methods. Okay, it contains only abstract methods and the final variables. Okay, so you cannot create an object, but whereas abstract class you can create an object. Can we create a constructor for interface? So we cannot create a constructor for interface, but whereas abstract class we can create. This is with respect to methods. Next, what is the next one? Variables. Next thing is with respect to variables. Next, with respect to variables, can we declare a variable in the interface? Can we declare a variable in the interface? So we can declare, but it should be initialized. We can declare a variable. The variable should be what? Initialized. The variable should be initialized. So here, whereas in the abstract classes, so no need to initialize the variable. No need to initialize the variable. By default in the interface, what is the access specifier and modifier for a variable? Static and so by default, what is the access specifier and access modifier for the variable in the interface? Public, static, final. This is by default. Even if you don't specify anything also, by default you apply these access specifiers and modifiers for the variable. Public, static, final. Next. So in the abstract class, we can apply any access specifier and any access modifier for the variable. And the last difference. So can we create an object for the interface? No, we cannot create an object. So you remember or not, the first day we discussed about one concept. The first day we discussed about one concept called serialization. Have you remembered? The first day we discussed one concept called serialization. What is in this serialization? Writing the object data into one file is called as serialization. Writing the object data into one file. The file may be anything. It may be XML file or it may be any file. Writing the data into a file is called as serialization. Which data? Object data. The requirement is here, we cannot get the object from one JVM to another JVM. If you want to transfer the object, we'll write the data into whatever the object contains. We'll write that object data into one file. We'll transfer that file. Okay. So here, there is one access modifier called transient. What is access modifier? Transient is access modifier. The first state are given only a title, transient, volatile, strict FP. They are given some access specifiers. Access modifiers. I given the list. Total 8 access modifiers are there. Up to now we discussed only 4 things. Abstract we discussed, static we discussed, final we discussed, sequence we had to discuss in the threads concept, and we discussed about the native. Native we discussed, right, which is used to interact with some other languages. Theoretically we discussed that concept also. So now try to understand what is transient. Transient, which is applied only for variables. Transient is only applicable for what? You cannot apply this one for classes and the method. This is only applicable for variables. If a variable is applied with transient, that variable will not be serialized. If the variable is applied with transient modifier, that variable will not be serialized. Meaning, you cannot write that variable data into a file. Okay. So what is in the transient? Transient we can only apply for variables. We can only apply for variables. If a variable is applied with transient, transient keyword cannot be serialized, meaning you cannot write this data into a file. Okay, so this is transient. So here, if you cannot create an object for the inheritance, there is no concept of serialization. Correct or not? When serialization concept is came into the picture, for writing the object data into a file. So if you cannot create an object for the interface, there is no concept of serialization. There is no concept of transient. So this transient and serialization and the synchronized, these things you cannot apply for interface. But for abstract class we can. Okay. So here, with respect to variables, this transient, next, transient, synchronized, serialization, next, transient, synchronized, serialization. Any other things? So we have a concept called volatile. This volatile is also, which is applicable for, this volatile concept is also applicable for variables. Frequently, if you are doing some modifications in a particular variable, we will declare that variable with volatile. Frequently, if you are doing some modifications in a particular variable, we will declare that variable with which modifier? Volatile modifier. But here, what is the default access specifier and access modifier for interface variables? By default, what is that one? Public, static, final. Meaning a variable is applied with final modifier. The variable is applied with final modifier. Volatile means what? Frequently, if you are doing some modifications in a particular variable, then we will declare that variable with a volatile modifier. But here, if you apply with final modifier, can you modify? Can you modify the value? No, you cannot. You cannot modify a value. So this volatile modifier also we cannot apply for. This volatile modifier also we cannot apply for interface. So transient, synchronized, serialization, volatile. So will not applicable. But here So all these transient, synchronized, serialization, volatile, all these things you can apply in the abstract classes. Okay. So these are the major differences between the abstract classes and the interfaces. Okay. So next, we'll discuss the synchronization concept and the volatile concept. We'll discuss when you are discussing about the threads concept. Okay. So next, put a heading. I think no need to discuss much about these arrays. All of you know about arrays, right? So generally, why you need arrays? So if you want to store some group of values, let us take. So array is a collection of similar data type. Generally, this is the answer which I studied in Balaguru Swami textbook. Okay. So what is the definition of array? A collection of similar data types. Okay. So array is a collection of similar data type. Array is a collection of similar data type. Okay. So meaning if you want to store some values, let us take, I want to store some 10 values, let us take x is equal to 10. So generally this is a bad approach. For example, if you want to take 10,000 values, if you want to store, how many variables will you create? 10,000 variables will create, right? So, okay. So unnecessarily, your code size is going to be increased a lot. Okay, and you need to write this one also. So we have a concept called what? Arrays. So by using arrays, you can store some similar type of values. Okay. Create a class. Let us take class array test. So we'll create a main method public static void main. So for example, I want to take 10 values from the user. Let us take 10 values in the sense it is going to be. Let us take, I want to store I want to take 5 values from the user. So which one I have to take? Array will take. Let us take, I want to get the integer type of values. We'll create an int array. Next, let us take values is equals to new int of 10. So remember here, in the array, prior we had to specify the size. Prior we had to specify the size. You had to specify how many values you want to store. So it is going to allocate some memory in the. It's going to allocate some memory or not. Integer is going to occupy 4 bytes of space in case of Java. So it is going to occupy how many bytes here? 40 bytes. Okay. Whether you inserted the data, you have not inserted the data, it's none of its business. You specify the size is 10. So it is going to allocate 10 into. So what is the data type here? It's an int type. So that they will allocate some memory. So we insert some values here. How to insert the values? Let us take values of 0. Like this, based on the index. So based on the index, we'll set some values here in the array. Okay, by using index, we'll store some values in the array. I think it's already known stuff. Who don't know arrays concept here? Anyone don't know arrays concept? I hope maximum knows, right? If you don't know, I'll explain. Otherwise, we'll go for the further things. Arrays you know or not? Okay. So you know arrays. Have you tried? I think you stored only the primitive data types you stored, either primitive or non-primitive. So have you tried with reference types? Reference type in the sense, for example, I want to store 10 student values I want to store. In an array, I want to store what? 10 student values I want to store. So how will you maintain 10 student records? How will you maintain 10 student records? A student contains student ID, student name. Next, let us take course. We'll take these three things: the student ID, student name, and the student course. Like how many records I want to maintain? 10 student records. So which data type you have to use here? Integer data type. Integer in the sense how many things you can store? Only number type of data you can store, right? But here I want to store 10 student records. Each student record is having three things: student ID, student name, and so what is in my class? Structure is a C concept. Here we don't have any structure and union. So in case of Java, what we have to use here? We have to use a class. Class is what? It's a user-defined data type or not? Class is a user-defined data type. So these are the built-in data types: int, float, character, and all these things. So now you know about class. So you can create your own user-defined. You can create by using a class. So before going to, let us take, I want to maintain some student records I want to maintain. So we'll create on class, we'll create, meaning I know you are already having the knowledge on arrays. Okay, but I'm extending that. I know in the college level they will teach only how to maintain, how to use this integer type of array, string type of array, character type of array and all. They will not teach how to maintain your own user-defined types, how to maintain, they will not teach, definitely. Okay. So here I am teaching that one, how to maintain the user-defined data type, how to maintain. Create a class. Let us take, I am creating one class. So let us take, what is the class name? Student. Class, student. Anything you have to specify? Enough? Class, student. Let us say I'll give a class name. My class name is what? Student POJO is a class name. Generally in the industry, lot of places you'll hear this term if you are writing the code using Java. POJO is termed as plain old Java object. POJO is termed as what? Plain old Java object. Meaning, if a class is not subtype of any other class, or if the class is not implementing any interface, then the class is called as POJO class. POJO is termed as plain old Java object. POJO is termed as plain old Java object. If class is not having any subtype, class is not having any superclass, or the class is not implementing any interface, then the class is called as a POJO class. Meaning it's a normal class. A normal class which contains the variables and the methods. That's it. It will not provide any, it will not extend any other class, and it will not provide the implementation for any other interface. Then that class is called as what? POJO. Just a normal class. That's it. So here, first we'll take some variables. Private. So here, I want to maintain three things: the student ID, student name, and the course. All these things are which type you have to specify. Let us take student ID is an int type. Next. So private string s name. Next private string. So first observe why we are writing, why we created three variables. Each student record is having three things: student ID, student name, and the codes. Okay. For this, so we'll say the file name. So let us take the file name is student POJO.java is the file name. Try to habituate or create a setters methods and the getter methods. Create the setter methods and the getter methods for the variables. Meaning, if you want to set the data directly, you cannot directly will not set the data. We use some methods. And what is the data type we specified for these variables? Private, right? Private. What is the access specifier we specified here? Private. Private in the sense, can you access outside the class? No, we cannot access. But I want to set some data to these variables, and I want to get the data from these variables. So how to get the data and how to set the data? In the industry, definitely it's preferred and mandatory. Declare the variables with private modifier. Declare the variables with which modifier? Private modifier. If you declare with private modifier, we cannot access by using directly you cannot access. Even if by using object also, can you access with the object, the private access specifiers? No, we cannot access. Then how to access? To access the data from this POJO class variables, we had to create the setter methods and the getter methods. So here, for this methods we will create public void. Let us take set SID. Set SID. This method is going to take one integer parameter as an input. Let us take SID underscore. Public void set SID is a method. We created this method. What is the input parameter for this method? This method is taking one integer parameter as an input, SID. Of course, right now, you don't know why you are writing the logic like this. But once if you start working, at that time definitely you will understand what is the need of writing the setter methods and the getter methods. Okay. So set SID. Next, public void. What is the next one? Set sname. This method is taking one string as an input. Let us take its name underscore. What is another method? Public void set we created setter methods. But what is the logic written in the setter methods? Nothing, right? Just only we created the methods we created. For example, I want to set some data to these variables. How to set the data? It's a private variables. You cannot access with the object. But we created some methods, right? Public void set ID, set sname, set codes. Already, the user is going to send some data to this method. The user is going to give some input parameter to this method. So what we have to do is this dot SID is equals to SID underscore. Meaning, if user wants to give some SID, the user is going to send that user ID. The user is going to send user ID to this method. What we are doing in this method? Take the value from the user, store this value to the SID. We are assigning the local variable. Which one is the local variable here? SID or SID underscore? SID underscore is the local variable. What is the global variable? SID. The scope of this SID underscore is up to this block. Outside the block you cannot access. Outside the block you cannot access this SID underscore. That's why we are assigning this local variable to the global variable. When you call this, we already discussed about the this and super keyword. When you call this, which variable you will get? Global variable you will get. In the class, when you call this dot some particular variable, you will get which variable? Local variable will get. Even though it specifies the same thing here. For example, I have not given underscore. Then this dot SID is equal to SID, let us say. Which one is global variable and which one is local variable here? If you write the logic like this dot SID is equal to SID. Which one is local variable and which one is global variable? So here, this dot SID in the sense always will refer to global variable, not in the this local variable. So this dot SID is equal to SID in the sense we take the value and we are assigning the value to the global variable. Just to avoid the confusion, just I give an underscore. So this dot SID is equal to SID and this dot SName is equals to SName and this dot course is equals to course. We cannot set the data to the private variables, so that's why we created some methods. We can call these methods, right? We can call the methods because the methods are public methods. We are setting the value to that method. Okay, data setting is okay. For example, I want to get the data from the variables. How to get the data from variables? How to get the data? These methods are used to set the data, right? I want to get the data. How to get the data? Same like this, we have to create. The getter methods also we have to create. So public get SID. Get SID is a method. For this get SID method, what is the return type here? Int you have to return. What you have to return? Return this dot SID. In the setter method we store the value into one global variable. In the getter method we are returning the global variable SID. Same like this, you have to create the remaining two methods you have to create. So get SID and get SName, get SID and get SName. So here what is the return type for name? It's a string type. This is what last one is. So we created a POJO class we created. Okay. So a plain old Java class. It doesn't have any super class and is not providing any implementation. Okay. If you ask without this setter and getter methods also we can write the logic. But there are some standards. To write the code in the industry there are some standards are there. So we have to follow the standards. Okay. And even the people also will get the good impression if you use all these, if you follow all these things. Okay. Get SID, get SName and get course. Generally, how the people will write the logic, for example, I want to maintain 10 student records. Generally, how the people will write the logic for example, student IDs are there. How many IDs are there? 10 IDs. Next. Student names are there. Next. 10 names. Let us take course. Generally, if you want to store the student record in the sense, you will write the logic like this. Create one integer array with size 10. Create one string string size with 10. Okay, but that is not the right approach. That is nursery logic. You are not the nursery students, right? You are not the nursery students. So if you want to maintain some multiple records, if you want to maintain, better create a class. Okay. So here we created one class called student POJO is a class name. I want to maintain some 10 student records I want to maintain. So now just save this class. So we'll create one more class. Let us take class array test is a class name. We'll write on main method public so I want to maintain how many student records? Take only 3. 10 in the sense it's very difficult for us. It will take a lot of time also. Let us take I want to maintain only 3 student records I want to maintain. So how you specify? If you want to maintain 3 student records, how to maintain? We use arrays, right? If you want to maintain multiple values, we use an array. So here, how to create an array for the student? Generally, how to create an integer array? Int array. So for example, values is equal to new int array of, we'll specify the size, right? This is in case of integer, it's a built-in data type. But now I want to maintain the user-defined data type. What is the class name we specify? Student POJO. Student POJO is an array because I want to maintain multiple student records. So let us take S POJOs. Student POJOs is equals to new student POJO. Specify the size. So what is the size we specified? 3. Okay, meaning I want to maintain how many student records? 3 student records I want to maintain. Okay. So let us take, I'll take a for loop. For int I is equals to 0, I less than POJOs dot length or size. Length and I plus plus. Meaning how much the size is specified, that many times I want to repeat this. So now here I want to create an individual student POJO object I want to create, and I want to create an individual student POJO object. Next, I want to add that POJO object to the array. Are you understanding or are you confusing those? Let's take, we'll remove this for loop. I created what? One array we created. Okay. So in the array, if you want to store the values, we'll take indexes, right? Okay. So here, let us take student POJOs of 0 is equals to, we had to create a new object or not. If you want to add some data into a class, you have to create an object. So create an object of what? New student POJO. Next, even if you are confusing with this approach also, we created an array we created. What is array name? Student SPOJOs is the array name. Okay. So every time we'll create a new student object, we'll create student POJO 1 is equals to new student POJO. Okay. So we created an object we created an object for which class? Student POJO. Try to understand what is meant by object exactly. If you know object, what is meant by object, 70% of the Java you know. 70% of the Java concept depends on what is meant by object. If you know exactly what is object and what object contains, how to create an object, 70% of the Java knowledge you know. So first try to understand what is object. Try to spend some more time on what is object. When I'm learning also, just I don't know at the time what is in my object exactly. And even now also, a lot of people, they don't know what is in my object. Okay, the class contains some data and behaviors, right? If you want to access the data and behaviors of a class, we had to create an object. So here, I want to maintain some multiple student records I want to maintain. Each student record is having the student ID, student name and the course. So here, I cannot maintain the three things individually. So we have a data type called, you can create a class. In the class, you can create three data types, like one integer data type, SID, SNAME and the course. So you can maintain, the student contains the three individual fields. You can contain this list of student records you can maintain. So that's why I created one array I created with student POJO. So now individually we'll create one student object, we'll store that one into, we'll add that one to the array. POJO 1 is equals to what this student POJO contains. Some variables, right? Can you access the variables? Can you access those variables? Come on, can you access or not? What is the access specifier we applied for the variables? What is the access specifier we applied for the variables? Private, right? Private variables can I access? No, we cannot access. Then I want to set some values to that student. A student POJO, I want to set the values. How to set the values? We created methods, right? We created setter methods and getter methods. I want to set some data. So here, POJO1 dot set. What is the first method? SID is a method. Set the value. Let us take 1, 2, 3. Next, POJO1 dot. What is the next one? Set SNAME. So what is the next one? Set. This is one student record. This is one student record. So like I want to maintain how many student records? 3 student records. So POJO 2. We created 3 individual student objects we created. Student POJO 1, student POJO 2 and student POJO 3. But what is the need of creating an array here? What is the need of creating an array? So individually we created, right? Individually we created the student objects we created. But we created one string array we created. Student POJO array we created. Okay. So here, what is the array name? POJOs of array index is going to start with 0. Okay. POJOs of 0 is equals to POJO 1. Next. POJOs of 1 is equals to what? POJO 2. Next. POJOs of 2 is equals to individually we created the student POJO objects individually we created. We stored that one into one array. Now the array contains how many student records? 3 student records. So are you clear up to this one? Sorry. Yes, progress. POJOs of 0, POJOs of 1 and POJOs of, okay. So individually we created the student objects. We stored all the individual student objects into one array. What is the array name now? POJO is the array. So let us take, I want to read the data. By using these setter methods, we can set the data. Now what is the requirement? I want to read the data from the student object. If you want to read the data, so once again shall we write student POJO 1 is equals to from the array. We'll write the logic like that, or shall we write the for loop? For loop shall we write? Okay. So for loop int I is equals to 0, I less than POJO start length and I plus plus. So for int I is equals to 0, I less than POJO dot length I plus plus. So here student POJO is equals to the student POJO's object dot or we have to pass the index. So we have to pass the index. This logic we are writing what? In a for loop we are writing the logic. So how many, what is the condition we specified here? Initially it's 0. How many values are available in the array, that many times repeat this process. How many times this process will repeat? This loop will repeat 3 times. Every time we are getting a value, when one student object we are getting, we are storing that student object into one. Just take on local variable, take on local the student POJO here. So here I want to get the values here. So we'll write system.out.println. Previously we set the value. Now I want to get the value. So which method we had to use here? Set method, which is used to set the value into object. Now we are getting the value from the object. So here the POJO object dot get SID. Next, what is the meaning of this? Just give one tab space. Then after that, POJO dot, what is the next one? Get SNAME. POJO dot get SID, get SNAME, and POJO dot get codes. So in a single line we are printing these three things: the ID, the name, and the codes. Okay. So how many student records are there? That many times this loop is going to be repeated. Every time we are getting one, student object from the array, we are storing one into one local variable. Okay, and we are sending the value. ABC data. So shall we test? Save this one. What is the class name we specified? Array test is a class name we specified. Array test.java. Save the file name array test.java. So we'll compile the code. So go to the command prompt. Go to the command prompt. So first we'll check whether Java is installed or not. So we'll set the path. Set path is equals to set path is equals to specify the path, comma, percentage path, percentage. So now cd space, we have to go to the path where the file is available. It is available in the desktop. So Java C, what is the file name? So before going to compile that one, first we have to compile our class. The first class is there, right? What is the class name? Student POJO.java. Java C student POJO.java. We forgot to give one semicolon here. Well, after testing we forgot semicolon. Java C student POJO.java. So it is giving an error here. So POJO class is compiled. Next, what is the next one? We created one class, right? What is the class name? Java C array test.java. Successfully it's compiled. There is no any issue. Next, Java space array test. Just give enter. If everything is fine, then you will get the values. So 1, 2, 3, Mahesh Java, 1, 2, 4, Rajesh Android, 1, 2, 5, Lokesh .NET. Okay. So this is a proper way to maintain the multiple records. I want to maintain some student records. I want to maintain. Again, each student is having some fields like student ID, student name, and the course. Okay. So if you want to maintain multiple details, if you want to maintain, better to go for the class. Better to go for create a class and in the array specify that class name. Okay. So here we created this is one example for we created for array. So any doubts in this one? If you know this example, if you understand this example, you know everything boss. You know everything in Java. Call and bond paper pen sign yes is. If you understand this example, you know everything in Java. So frankly tell me, how many of you understand? Okay. So okay, you understand, right? Okay. So mainly class which is used to maintain the user defined data if you want to maintain. Okay. Next, is there any problems with array? Still anything you want from me for arrays concept? Single dimension array, multi-dimension array. I hope you already discussed in your academics. It's waste of time to discuss once again. Array which is used to maintain a similar type of data. Okay. So is there any disadvantages you found in arrays? Is there any disadvantages? Is there any disadvantages have you identified in arrays? So for example here, I want to maintain 10,000 student records I want to maintain. So initially we had to specify 10,000 size, right? Initially only we had to specify 10,000 size here. 10,000 size is specified. I expected 10,000 people will come to my class. Let us say I book a big auditorium, and we almost arranged 10,000 seats for a workshop, let us say. Unfortunately, let us take only 2 people are came. Okay, whatever the remaining 9,998 shades empty, right? Lot of space is waste. Obviously, memory is also waste. Memory is waste, and the cost also, right? If I expect only 2 people, so I will take a small room. I will not book a big auditorium. Let us take next time I expected only 2 people will come. So that's why I booked a small room. So at that time 10,000 people will come. So how will you arrange? It's difficult or not? So arrays is also same thing. Before you had to specify how many values you want to store. Dynamically you cannot specify, you cannot expect. Dynamically you cannot specify. So that's why Is it clear? This application? Shall we forward to next thing? Next concept. The most important concept in Java. The most important concept in Java, that is collections. Arrays is having few disadvantages. Arrays is having few disadvantages, like dynamically you cannot specify the size. But whereas collections is a framework. Collections is a framework. A framework means what? Collection means a set of classes and interfaces. Collections is a framework. It's not collections, but it's collection. Collection is a framework. A framework means which contains set of classes and interfaces. Which contains some set of classes and interfaces. So what we can do with the collection? What we can do with the collection? So what we can do with the arrays? What we can do with the arrays? We can store some, or you can maintain some data in the program. If you want to maintain some data in the program, we use what? Arrays we use. But arrays, as per just now we discussed, arrays is having few disadvantages. Arrays is having few disadvantages. So dynamically we cannot allocate the memory. Based on my requirement, I want to arrange the items. So that's why. So we are going. The next important concept is collections. The alternative for arrays in Java is what? Collections. So collection is a framework which contains set of classes and interfaces. By using collections, we can maintain the data So by using collection, we can maintain the data in the application. Like previously we stored 3 student records, right? Where you store the 3 student records? In the application only. When you close the application, will you get all the student records? No. Temporarily in the application, if you want to store, we will go for collection. Permanently if you want to store, అర్థం కావట్లేదు ఎవరికన్నా మీకు అర్థం కావట్లేదు సిగ్గుపడద్దండి అని పెళ్లి చూడ కాలేదు కదా It's a framework which contains enough classes and interfaces. Same like arrays was. Same like arrays only. If you want to maintain some data, we will go for collection. Arrays no disadvantage enti. Dynamically you cannot specify, but in collections dynamically you can specify. But in arrays we don't have any built-in functionalities. Everything manually we have to write. For example, I want to maintain 10,000 student names. I want to maintain how many student names? 10,000 student names I want to maintain. So user is going to give dynamically. Dynamically user is going to enter 10,000 names dynamically. But when it is storing the data, I want to store the data in an ascending order. 10,000 records, first take 10,000 names from the user. Okay, after completion of this, or at the time of inserting the data only, I want to arrange the data in an ascending order. So will you write the logic for that in arrays? How complex it is? At the time of inserting the data only, I want to arrange the data in a ascending order. I want to arrange the data. How will you write the logic for that? It's very difficult for us. Manually to write the logic is very difficult. But here in case of collection, at the time of inserting the data only, if you want to arrange the data, there is a class called treeset. What is the class name? Treeset is a class name. If you use the treeset, at the time of inserting the data only, automatically it will arrange the data in a ascending order. Like we have some built-in functionalities we are having in collection. In program, if you want to maintain some data, we use what? Collections. By using arrays also we can maintain. Okay, but arrays is having few disadvantages. To overcome those disadvantages, a concept is came into Java from Java 1.5, that is collection. Before Java 1.5 there is no concept of collections. From Java 1.5 only the collection concept is came into the picture. So mainly the collection is an interface. Collection is an interface. Mainly this collection is which is used to perform these four operations. So obviously for creating, reading, updating and deleting. What you can do with the data? Create some data, read the data, update the data and delete the data. Apart from these four things, so will you do any new operations on the data? Alright. If you take any technology, we will do only four things on it. What is the four things? Creating, reading, updating and deleting. This collection is also the same thing, which is used to. It is providing some built-in classes. It is providing some built-in classes or built-in functionalities to perform these four operations: creating, reading, updating, and so mainly the collection is having four interfaces. One is the list, set, map, and these are the main pillars in the collection. Imagine if you take it's a building, collection is a building. These are the main four pillars: list, set, map, and okay. So you can use any one of the things. If you want to maintain some data in your program, you can use any one of the collection here. Either you can use list or set, map, or based on your requirement, you have to select which one I have to use. Either you have to use list or set or map or best example I will tell you first. Let us take I am developing one application. Let us take babynames.com. What is the site name? Babynames.com is a website. In this babynames.com website, I purchased one account from Naukri.com people. So I given some amount to the Naukri people. Naukri people is having n number of data, right? N number of records, n number of profiles they are having. Let us take they are having 1 crore resumes in their database. For example, I contacted with Naukri people. Boss, I am developing an application called babynames.com. I need only the person names. Don't give any other information. Don't give any other information. Only give the names. That's it. Okay. So that's why they are providing all these people. They will sell these things. This Naukri people. Why they are providing it free of cost? Why they are providing the application with free of cost? They will sell the data. Whatever the data is available in their database, they will sell the data. They will sell the data. Okay, your mobile numbers from different third party, Paytm, next Flipkart. Sometimes I'll get some messages. I never registered my mobile number on their sites. But how I am getting the messages from those companies? Of course, you have not registered in the Flipkart or Paytm, but you have registered in the Naukri. They will purchase the data from the Naukri. So here, I also purchased the data from the Naukri. In the 1 crore names, there may be a chance of repeating words, right? Repeating names, right? Here only if I say Mahesh, there are 10 people with the name Mahesh. Lakshmi in the sense, n number of people with the name Lakshmi, let us take. At the time of inserting the data, baby names in the sense what? I have to provide the unique names or not? Okay, how many names you can provide? Only one with that name. So if any duplications are there, I don't want to take the duplications. At that time, you have to use a collection called set. Which collection you have to use? A set collection you have to use. Set will not allow the duplicates. Set will not allow what? The duplicates. And set will allow, there is a class called preset. At the time of inserting the data only will allow arranging the data in an ascending order like that. For example, if you want to maintain, but instead we have a disadvantage. We will not maintain the data in a proper order. In which order you inserted the data, you will not maintain the data in that order. Let us take first name I given Mahesh, Rajesh and Lokesh. At the time of printing the data, you will not get in the same order. The order is going to be difference. Okay? But if you want to maintain the order, you have to go for list. But list allows what? Duplication. List allows the duplication. Okay. So slowly we will explore one after another. We'll see what are some of the implementations in the list and set, map and queue. These are the four interfaces. List, set, map, queue, and these are the four interfaces. So for this list interface contains what? Abstract methods. Definitely someone has to provide the implementation for that methods or not? Yes. So what are the classes? What are the implementation classes for this list? I'll give one example. That is array list one is one implementation. Array list next. So linked list is one example. So these are the implementations for which class? These are the implementations for which interface? The list interface. For set also we have some implementations like tree set, navigable set. We have few implementations for set and few implementations for map, hash map, dot. Internal data structure is, there are some n number of implementations are there boss. For the list there are other implementations also there. Just to give an idea, I given only two classes. What are the two classes? List and linked list I given. There are other things also there. Okay, abstract list and all. Internal data structure for this one is array. Internal data structure is what? Array. So in the list, internally the data is maintained what? Internally the data is maintained in a arrays. Okay. So we'll develop one sample example. We'll see how to maintain the data in a collection. So even you can insert a normal primitive data also you can maintain in the collection. It's not only for objects. Even a primitive data also you can insert in the collection. Okay. So here we create one class. So have we taken this one? Slowly we'll discuss one after another. First we'll discuss list, then after that we'll discuss set, then after that map and okay. So let's take in the list. List is an interface, right? It doesn't contain any implementation. Which class contains implementation? Either we have to go for array list or linked list we have to use. Okay. So public class, we create a class. Let's take class name is list test1 is a class. What is the class name? List test1 is a class. So we'll create a main method here. So public static void main. So here we'll create an array list. First we'll insert some number type of data we'll insert. Okay. Next we'll see let's see how to read the data from this one. Okay, so we'll create an array list. మీరు మాట్లాడుతున్నా కామ్గా ఉన్నారంటే ఏం అనలేక అంటే ఫీల్ అవుతారు. You understand that? Okay, you will not reveal this one. బేసిక్ గా కోపం ఎక్కువ బాస్. దరిద్రం కొద్ది ఏంటంటే ఈ ఫ్యాకల్టీ ఇవ్వడం చూసారా, we need lot of patience. Correct or not? You cannot express anything. Correct or not? If you express anything, they are all in a group. Correct or not? But the faculty is single. If they can do anything, అసలు ఇంకా పెళ్లి కూడా కాలేదు. Don't talk to us. ఏంటంటే faculties is going to use this interest. It's a common, right? It's a common nature. But faculties ఏంటంటే they will use their interest. Because you know this concept. We marketed added language. We question them. But don't talk. The faculty is going to use this interest. Okay? It will affect on the other people. Okay? మీ మనోభావాలు దెబ్బతీసింటే క్షమించండి. Okay? So we create array list. If you want to add some data to the array list, list dot what is the method name? Add is the method to add some data to the list. Okay? So which type of data we have to insert here? In case of array, we specify the data type. It's a string array, it's an int array, it's a student POJO array. We specified the data type we specified here. But here in the array list, if you want to add some data to the array list, which data type you have to add? Let us say we'll add a number, we'll add next. I added a float value add. I added a string value. Okay? So list test1 dot java. So java c list test1 dot java. What is the exception we got here? Exception is cannot find the symbol it is in. I am unable to find this array list where this array list is available. This array list is available on one package. The package name is util. The collections is available in which package? Java.util package. So import java.util.star. Import java.util.star. Okay, let's save this one. So Java C, what is the class name? List test1 dot Java. There is no any exception. Exception is not given here, but it is given in note. What is a note? What is a note here? List test1 dot Java uses unchecked or unsafe operations. Recompile with something, but it's not an error, right? Generally, we will not consider all the messages and the warnings. So we'll test the output. So Java list test1. So there is no any warnings. But see, in case of array, we have to add only one type of data. Either we can add integer type of data or string type of data or float type of data. Correct or not? But here, in a single array list, we stored all these things. In one number type of data we inserted. Next, float type of data we inserted. Next, what is the next one? String type of data we inserted. Do one thing. I want to provide a restriction to the user here. I want to take only a number type of data. See here, if you add any type of data means here, there is no type safety. What is the term here? there is no type safety in the collections. So here array list is not what? Array list is not, collections is not type safe, whereas array is type safe. Arrays is what? Arrays is type safe, whereas collection is what? Collection is not type safe. Collection is not type safe. What is meant by type safety here? Array is collection safe. Sorry, array is collection safe, whereas collection is not type safe. What is meant by type safety here? Because next you are going to discuss one important topic, one more thing. So to discuss that topic, you have to understand what is meant by type safety here. So given a statement, array is type safe. Array is what? The type safe. So meaning here, type in the sense the data type here. Previously, let us take here. Do one thing. I created one integer array was. I created one int array. Let us take int x is equals to new int array of. Let us take 3. X of 0 is equals to 1, 2, 3. X of 1 is equals to I created an int array created. Okay, x is a variable name we specified. X of 0, x of 1, and x of 2. Save the project. Compile the code. Java C list test.java. Whether it will execute or it will give an error. To give an error, the compiler will give you the error. The error is incompatible types. X of 1 is equals to Mahesh. So, and what is the message here? Required int, but it is found what? String it is found. So, meaning array is type safety here. Meaning whatever the data type is specified, you can insert only that type of data only you can insert. In case of array. But in collection, this is arrays type. I will comment this logic. But whereas collection, if you use collection, for collection also I want to provide. Okay, array is having some disadvantages, so that's why we decided to use what? Collection we decided to use. But here in collection, the user may enter any type of data, right? I want to provide a restriction to the user, was give only a number type of data. Because let us say I'm storing student IDs. I'm taking the student IDs information. IDs contains only what? Number type of data, let us say. So at that time I don't want to take the character type of data. But here if you take collection here, we cannot provide that restriction. Correct or not? We cannot provide that restriction to the user. So meaning this arrays is not, so this array list is not type safe. This collection is not type safe. So to provide the type safety there is a concept is introduced from Java 1.5. The concept is called as generics. So what is the concept name? Generics. In a single word, to say about generics, generics is used to provide a type safety and to resolve the type casting problems. So generics concept which is used to provide the type safety, generics which is used to provide the type safety and generics which is used to provide the type safety and which is used to resolve the type, which is used to provide the type safety and which is used to resolve the type casting problems. Generics which is used to provide the type safety and which is used to resolve the type casting problems here. Okay, how to provide the type safety for the class. Array list is on class, right? Array list is nothing but on class or not? Yes. So have we completed this? Generics? Have we taken this statement? Which is used to provide a type safety and which is used to resolve the type casting problems. So here, so I want to provide a type safety here. If you want to provide the type safety for this array list, we have to use what? Generics. Generics is going to be represented in greater than and less than. So here, which type of data you want to insert, you can specify here. For example, you want to take only integer type of data, right? Specify in the Angular braces, specify integer. If you specify this one, then this concept is called as what? Generics. Generics. In lot of places, we already seen this generics. Even to declare a class, they already given the class declaration syntax, right? What is the class declaration syntax? Access specifier, access modifier, class keyword, generics, and the class name. Okay. So here we are using generics. Generics, which is used to provide the type safety and which is used to resolve the type casting problems here. So here we have to provide the type safety for this array list. So how to provide the type safety? By using generics, you can provide the type safety for this array list. So now at the time of inserting the data, which will accept only a number type of data, integer type of data. So previously there is no any error, right? In the array list there is no any error. It is accepted when you type any type of data. By default, the data type is its object. By default, if you don't specify anything, what is the data type here? Object. What is the class characteristic? Object. In object, you can store any type of data, right? Because all the classes are child of which class? All the classes are child of which class? Object class. This integer, string, whatever. All the classes are the subclass of. If you don't specify anything here, it's an object. In object, you can insert any type of data we can insert. So here, I given a restriction here. Given a restriction, I want to insert only which type of data? It is a type of data. So there is no any error. So now we'll test. Previously there is no any error. Successfully it's compiled. Now if you see here, the compiler is given error, no suitable method found for add double method. For the first one there is no any problem, but for which value you got the problem? The second value we got the problem. There is no any method to add the double value. Next, int comma integer is not applicable. So meaning here, we provided the type safety. We provided the type safety for the class by using which concept? Generics. Generics, which is used to provide a type safety. So you understand, right? What is in the type safety and the generics. This is type safety. Okay. Next, what is the second one? Second one, which is used to resolve type casting problems. For example, here I have not specified anything here. Let us take. I have not used any generics concept here. We taken only array list. We taken. Let us take. I inserted only numbers also inserted. Imagine we inserted what? Only number type of data we inserted in the array list. Okay. For example, if you want to read the data, if you want to add the data, there is a method called add is a method. If you want to read the data, there is a method called get is a method. For adding the data, add is a method. To read the data, there is a method called get is a method. So if you want to get the data, We'll write the logic in a for loop for int I is equals to 0, I less than list dot. In case of array, what is the method we used? Length we used, right? Okay. So here we have to use size. How many values are there in the list? That many times this process is going to be repeat. I mean this loop is going to be repeat that many times. Okay. So system.out.println, or we are expecting some integer value, right? We are expecting some integer value. We are expecting int value is equals to, I want to get the value from the list. List.get of I. So you get the integer value. We are expecting integer because we inserted which value inserted? Integer value inserted. We are expecting also which value? Integer value. So that's why I stored in one integer variable called int value is equal to list.get of I. Just save this one. Java C. What is the class name? List test1.java. We got an exception. What is the exception name? Incompatible type. So required int, but what is found? Object. By default for the array list, if you don't specify any typecasting, by default it is what? It is an object. But here we are converting that one into what? We are storing that one into one integer variable we are storing. But what is the actual return type of this one? Actual return type of get mother is what? It's an object. So here, so can we convert this object to integer? The return type of this get method is an object, right? What it is saying was you taken an int variable you taken, but what is the return type of this get method is an object. So here I am telling to the compiler, I am giving a trust to the compiler. Compiler, I know it is returning which type of data? Integer type of data only it is returning. So here we can give integer. So this concept is called as typecasting in Java. This concept is called as typecasting. I know it's going to return object, the list.get method. In the object that contains value, the integer value contains. So just convert that one to number. So we'll test. So Java C list test1.java, Java list test1. So previously we have an error, right? Now we don't have any error because we typecasted that object to integer. But if you use generics here, array list of integer. If you use integer here, you need to typecast here. If you use generics, you don't need to use any typecasting. Previously, without typecasting, we got an error. But now, without any typecasting also, there is no any error. Okay. So with generics, we can provide two things. What are the two things? One is we can provide a type safety we can provide at the time of inserting the data on this. Another thing is we can provide typecasting. Okay. So these two things we can provide with the generics. So this generics we can apply for a variable we can apply as well as for method we can apply. Sorry, not for variables. This generics is applicable for classes as well as for methods. It is not applicable for variables. This is applicable only for the classes and the methods. That's it. Okay. So mainly collections which is used to hold some data. This is an example to hold a number type of data, right? But we created one class, right? Have you remember we created one student POJO class we created. So shall we maintain that student POJO record here? The advantage of this collection, you don't need to specify any size here. Have you specified anything here? Size have you specified? I want to store only 3 values, I want to store only 10 values. Have you specified anything here? No. If you dynamically can add n number of values, you can add dynamically. Automatically based on the values, automatically will increase the size also. Internally, what is the data structure for the arrays? Internally, the data structure is arrays only. Internally, to maintain the data in a arrays. Internally, to maintain the data in a arrays. So remember this point. The internal data structure for the array list is array only. Okay. So here, we stored normal number type of data we stored. In our previous example in the array, we stored one class object we stored in the arrays. Correct or not? We stored one class object in the array. So is it possible or can we store the student object into array list? Have you understand what I am saying? In our previous example, in the array, we stored what? The student POJO we created on class. That class we stored in one array. So can we store that one into one collection? I am asking. Yes, can we store? Yes. So here, we'll make some changes in this existing class only. But what is the data type we had to? What is the data type we had to specify here? The type safety. What is the data type we had to specify? I want to maintain the group of student records. I want to maintain. What is the data type we had to specify here? Previously, we are maintaining what? Try to understand. Of course, even though it is Kamal Hassan movie, try to understand. Okay, collection Kamal Hassan movies. It's a like question paper kind of thing to the normal audience. He will give very tough questions. Understand. Correct or not? It is also like Kamal Hassan movie only. It's not like Trivikram movie. It's a Trivikram movie days are completed. Because we are at the climax, right? We are at the climax. So here, try to understand, we are not maintaining the primitive type of data, meaning integer type of data, float type of data, we are not maintaining. I want to maintain the student records I want to maintain. Not student ID, student name. I want to maintain the student records. Each student contains, again, 3 things, student ID, name and codes. So that's why we created one class we created. What is the class name we specified? Student POJO we created. We already developed an application how to maintain the list of student records by using arrays. Same application now I want to maintain in a list I want to maintain. So here array list of student POJO is equals to new array list of student POJO. Even if you don't understand anything, just blindly look on the screen, that's it. Even though if you are not understanding anything here, in future definitely, in your projects definitely you will find a requirement of using these collections, you get a requirement of using these POJO classes and all. At that time you will remember all these things. Okay, that day Mahesh told you, right? ఆ రోజులో పక్కన సెల్తో మాట్లాడుకుంటా. Really boss, same thing is happening in my life also. మా ఫ్యాకల్టీ చెప్పేటప్పుడు ఈ కాన్సెప్ట్ అని ఎందుకు యూజ్ అవుతారో బాగు అనుకున్నాను. But once when I started my career, whatever I learned, pratidi aa roju gurtu vachedi anamata. When I started working, okay, this concept my faculty told that day. He given so and so example. Okay. Even though if you are not understanding anything, just look the boards, that's it. Okay. So array list of student POJO. So previously we added the individual values we added to the list, right? But now which values we had to add? Student objects we had to add to the list. Which values we had to add? Student objects we had to add to the list. So we have to create the student objects. We'll do one thing. I think we already, in our previous example, we already inserted, I think. What is the previous example name? Array test, right? In the array test, we already inserted some data into the student POJO. We created the objects we created. We inserted the data into the objects. We created the individual student objects we created. We inserted the data also into the objects. And finally, we stored all the objects into one array we stored. Now the same story was. Individually we created the student objects we created, but previously we stored into one array, right? But now we had to store into array list. Here we are using collection, there we are used array. So here, how to add these to the list? I mean array list. Your array list object dot add is a method. POJO 1 list dot add of POJO 1, POJO 2 and POJO 3. So are you clear up to this? So previously we stored into one array. Now we stored that list of objects into one collection. One array list we stored. Okay. Next. Next thing is written the for loop, which is used to get the data from the array. This is the logic written in the previous arrays. Now we will copy this logic. That's very specified here. We had to change a small. I had to change here. So here for int I is equals to 0, but previously this is the array dot length, right? But now the data is available in a list. So here you have to use what? List dot size. List dot size. So here the same thing, but here what is the array name here? I mean, what is the collection name? List dot get of. Previously it's an array was, now it's a collection. In case of array, directly we specified the index we specified. In case of collection, which method we have to use? Get method we have to use. Completed. So we'll test here. Java C. What is the file name? List test 1 dot Java. So there is no any. So you should compile it here. T is list. So list test 1 dot Java. What is saying? Incompatible types we say int value is equal to list dot get of I. Where we used int here? So 1 second. So actually we have not removed this file. So Java C list test 1 Java list test 1. So 1 2 3 Mahesh Java 1 2 3 Rajesh Android 25 Lokesh dot. Previously we stored the data in array. Now we store the data in one collection. There is no any great logic written. Previously we taken one array, we taken, now we taken a collection. Okay. Next. So do you want to write anything? So you need a break or shall we continue? Break you want or shall we continue? Continue. Break this one. Take a small break. Then after that, either we will continue the collections or we start the text concept. Okay. Collection is not completed. Just we introduce the collection. That's it. Okay. There are a lot of things to discuss in the collection. Okay. So we'll discuss the collection topics. Okay. First take a break. Then after that we'll decide. We'll go for threads or we'll complete the collection. Shall we start? So just we started the collections topic. We started. There are a lot of things we had to discuss in the collection. Okay? Just we started the collection concept. That's it. Okay. So it's not completed. Work on it. So next, so we'll discuss about the threads. Collections is not completed. Okay. Just remember it. Just we started. That's it. Okay. So next, so what is the next concept? Multi-threading in Java. So before going to discuss about multi-threading, so for a few minutes we'll discuss about multitasking. So before going to discuss about multi-threading concept, discuss more about collection in the next upcoming classes. Okay? I'm starting multi-threading concept. Wait, type in madam. We'll start. Okay? You only said we'll start, right? So this will start with our So now should discuss about multitasking. Multitasking means what? Executing different tasks simultaneously. Correct or not? Best example, you'll sit in a classroom. So you listen to the classes and parallelly you'll write the notes. Some people parallelly they will sleep. Correct or not? And some people parallelly, if any girl comes automatically, will come with the 60 ratio or 70 degrees ratio. Next. Matter and it is sir. A girl entered into a classroom. అబ్బాయిలు చూసారంటే రీజన్ అదే అబ్బాయిలు చూసారంటే so at a time multiple tasks, you can execute multiple tasks simultaneously. That is multitasking, right? So, and let us take a programmer. This multitasking is categorized into two parts. This multitasking is categorized into how many parts? Two parts. So one is the process-based multitasking. Process-based multitasking and thread-based multitasking. The process-based multitasking in the sense. The process-based multitasking in the sense. Process-based multitasking in the sense. Execute a task in a separate process. Execute the task in a separate process. There is no any relation between one process and another process. Execute the task in a separate process. There is no any relation between one process and another process. Generally, at the time of writing some program, I have one habit. That is, parallelly I will watch the video files. Parallelly, at the time of writing the code, I will watch the video files, not in the office, generally in my room. At the time of writing the code in the sense common thing, right? It's a repeated job. Correct or not? For example, already I know how to write that code. I have to write that code, right? That's it. So I know how to write that code. Parallelly, I'll divide my screen into two parts. One is for coding part, Eclipse part, half part is Eclipse, and half part is YouTube videos. Parallelly, I'll watch both coding part as well as videos. If any interesting scene is came, my concentration is on videos. There is no interesting part, then my concentration is on coding part. For example, if you close the YouTube video file, it will affect anything on your program? No, right? So there is no any relation. There is no any relation between the YouTube application and your program. So that is the best example for process-based multitasking. Executing the specific task in a separate process. There is no any relation between one process and another process. But when it comes to thread, executing a part of the code in a separate process. Executing a part of the code in a separate process is nothing but thread. We'll discuss that in other classes. వేరే క్లాస్ వరకు వస్తుంది ఇప్పుడు చెప్పండి బాస్ విల్ టాక్ ఫస్ట్ యూ టాక్ డౌట్స్ ఇప్పుడు మాట్లాడుకోవడం చెప్తున్నాను So what is the first one? The process-based multitasking, right? So what is in the process-based multitasking? Process-based multitasking. Executing the task in a separate process. Executing the task in a separate process. Executing the task in a separate process. There is no relation. There is no relation between one process to another process. Best example, let us take if you take your OS, at a time you can play an audio file, you can type a text document, you can browse the internet. So parallel you can perform multiple operations. That is the best example for process-based multitasking. So there is no any relationship when you close a browser, that will not affect anything on the text file. Even if you close the text file also, it will not affect anything on the browser. Wait that two first. So there is no excuse me. So there is no relation between one process to another process. So each process will execute, each task will execute in a separate process. Okay. Next. So what is the next one? Thread-based multi-thread. So this thing programmatically we cannot handle this one. Programmatically, the programmer is not having that much capability to start a separate process or for a separate task. Okay, so we have to create a, what is the next one? Thread-based multitasking. Thread-based multitasking. Thread-based multitasking in the sense executing the part of the code in a separate process. Executing the part of the code in a separate process. For example, in my program, let us take that 10,000 lines of code is. How many lines of code? 10,000 lines of code. There is no any relation. There is no any relation between the first 5,000 lines and the second 5,000 lines. So there is no any relation between the first 5,000 lines of code and the second 5,000 lines of code. Those are independent. For example, to execute this 10,000 lines of logic, imagine it is taking 10 seconds of time. It is taken how many seconds? 10 seconds of time to execute this 10,000 lines of logic. For example, there is no any relation between this 5,000 lines of logic and this 5,000 lines of logic, right? So what we do is, this is a separate process. We create a separate process in the same program. This is in a single program. In a single program, we create two separate processes. We create, and there is no any relation also between these two processes. So at a time, let's start two processes. How much time will it take now? Rather than 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Rather than 10 seconds, it will take only 5 seconds only. It will split into 5 parts. How much time it will take? Only 2 seconds. Especially the downloading manager kind of applications. You know download managers, right? YouTube download manager, internet download manager. So for example, to download a file, imagine it will take 1 hour time to download a file. what they will do is they will divide the file into 4 separate parts, 4 or 10 separate process. So each process is nothing but one thread. So first 200 MB of, let us take the file size is 1 GB. They will divide the code from 1 byte to 200 MB, one thread. One thread will take care of downloading that. Next from 200 to 400 MB, another thread. So at a time, so multiple threads, if multiple threads are processed at a time, your work is going to be complete quickly or not? Yes. So to increase the performance or to utilize the RAM capacity more, we use multiple threads. We'll create multiple threads. Generally, in the application development, very rare cases you'll get a requirement of using this multitasking concept. A thread, multi-threading. In very rare cases, you'll find a requirement of using this multi-threading in the application development. Especially this multi-threading concept is used in the gaming applications. If you want to start your career in the game applications, at that time you have to be expert in the threads. I already given the example, right? In a game, each and everything is nothing but one thread. Each and everything is nothing but one thread. Let us take, if you take the Subway Surface game, the player is one thread, the moving trains is also one thread, and the player is going to collect some coins, right? Each coin is nothing but one thread. So each and everything is nothing but one thread. So how many threads they have to create? N number of threads. Okay? Especially in the gaming kind of applications, and if you are displaying some animations in your program, so at that time you will get a requirement of using this multi-threading concept. Otherwise, in the applications, in very rare cases, you will get a requirement of using this threads concept. But it's very important topic in the core Java also. Okay? So here, executing the part of the code in a separate process is called as thread-based multitasking. So this process-based multitasking, we cannot handle this one. So who can handle? The OS will take care. Programmatically, you can handle only this thread-based multitasking. Okay. You understand what is multitasking. So next we will understand thread. What is in the thread? Thread is a part of program execution or something. So thread is a lightweight process. Thread is a lightweight process which sits on JVM. Which sits on top of JVM. To perform a specific task. To perform a specific task, we will create a thread. Thread is a lightweight process which sits on top of JVM to perform a specific task. To complete a specific task, we will create a thread. Okay. So thread is a lightweight process which sits on top of JVM to perform a specific task. Do you know how many ways to create a thread? You understand what is in the thread, right? To perform a specific task in the program. We create threads. Okay. So in Java, there are 2 ways to create a thread. How many ways? 2 ways to create a thread. So in Java, there are 2 ways to create a thread. In Java, there are 2 ways to create a thread. The 2 ways are, one is by extending thread class. There are 2 ways to create a thread. One is by extending a thread class you can create, and another thing is by implementing runnable interface. There are 2 ways to create a thread. One is by extending a thread class you can create, and another thing is by implementing runnable interface also you can create a thread. So in both cases, whatever it may be extending thread or it may be implements runnable interface. In both cases, so we have to provide the implementation for both cases we had to provide the implementation for run method. What is the method name? By extending a thread class or by implement runnable interface. The two cases we had to provide the implementation for run method, we had to provide the implementation. Next, there is a method called start method is used to start a thread. Start method is used to start a thread, and explicitly we cannot call the run method. Explicitly we cannot call the run method. When the run method is going to be called? When you call start, automatically the run method will invoke. So here, write this statement also. Explicitly we cannot run. Explicitly we cannot call the run method. Explicitly we cannot call the run method. Explicitly we cannot call the run method. Okay. Explicitly we cannot call the run method. Explicitly we cannot call the run method. So when you start the thread, when we start the thread, so it will invoke which method? So when we start the thread, it will invoke the run method. It will invoke. So when we start the thread, it will invoke the run method. Thread is a separate process. If you want to do a separate task, okay, we'll create a thread. You can create a thread by using extends thread class or by implements runnable interface. Okay. In both cases, we have to provide the implementation for run method. So completed. So shall we develop an example for threads? So create a class. Let's take file new. The class name is threads test is a class name. What is a class name? Threads test is a class name. In this class, we'll create a main method, public we created. Main method we created. Next, do one thing. In the main method, for int I is equals to 0, first I'll write the code. Observe here. I return I less than 100 and I plus plus. Just will print the value here. System.out.println. You know, in Java, every main method is working on one thread. Every main method is working. Every class is on thread boss. In Java, every class is working on one thread. What is the thread name? Main thread. Every Java class is working on one main thread. So here, I have taken one for loop here. I am printing the value in the for loop. So we taken two for loops. We taken to say the file name. What is the file name? Threads test.java. When you compile, when you run the code, what you'll get here? What you'll get? First you'll get from 1 to 100. You will get. Then after that, you'll get from. Again you'll get what? 1 to 100. Otherwise, we'll do one thing. Initially, it's 999. Let's take 199. I is greater than 100, then j minus. So first, you'll get from 0 to 100, 0 to 99 you will get. Then after that you will get what? Say the code. So Java C. What is the file name? Threads test.java. So Java threads test. So what is the output we got here? First we got the values from 0 to 99 we got the values. First we got the values up to 99. Then after that we got the values in a reverse order. From 199 to 100 we got the values. Okay. So here this is on thread. By default every Java is working on one main thread. Now here the requirement is this is an individual process. This from printing from 1 to 100 is an individual process, and the second thing is another individual process. There is no any dependencies between these two things. If you calculate the time now here to print this one, it will take some time. Then after that, it will take some more time to print this one. Correct or not? Because both are working on a same thread. It's a sequential execution, one after another. But I don't want to make it sequential. I want to make it parallel. If you want to make it parallel, what do you have to do? So we had to create a separate thread. We had to create for this one. We had to create a separate thread. We had to create for this. Okay. So if you want to create a thread, directly you can write the logic. Let us take new thread. I think if you have 1 minute. So you can create a class, right? Do one thing. This is the main class, thread test. We'll create one more class, we'll create here. This is the main method, right? 1 second first. This is the logic written. Now what I want to do? The first thing is a separate process, printing from 1 to 100. The second thing is a separate process. So if you want to create a separate process, we have to create a thread we have to create. So what is the first step to create it? There are two ways out there. One is by extending thread class is one thing. Another thing is by implements runnable interface. So here I want to create a separate thread. Let us take thread 1. Thread 1. What is the first step? By extending thread class. Extends thread. Create a class with subtype of thread class. So here, even when you extend a thread class or when you are implementing the runnable interface, we have to provide the implementation for one method. What is the method name? Run method. So here, in the thread1 class, public void run method. So what we'll do is, we'll move this logic. Which logic? This logic is there, right? We'll move this logic to thread 1. Now it's a separate thread. Which one? Up to this one. We are confusing it. So this is on thread was main thread. This is class thread test. We created on main method we created, and we written a for loop we written. Okay. Now I want to make the first printing from 1 to 100. I want to make a separate process. So that's why we created on class we created. We created on separate class thread 1. There are two ways to create a thread. One is by extending a thread class or by implementing runnable interface. So we taken on class called thread name. This is subtype of thread class. So we created a thread. Even by extending a thread class or by implementing runnable interface, we had to provide the implementation for one method. What is the method name? Run method. Explicitly, we cannot call this run method. When this run method is going to be called? When we call the start method, automatically this run method is going to be executed. So just observe the braces. That will close on. Total we open 3 braces. So we have to close 3 braces. So first we open for the main class, then this is the main method, this is for loop. We close the for loop and we close the main method. Okay. Next, after that we created separate inner class we created, and in that inner class we created the run method. We taken one for loop. This is for loop, this is for run method, and one more thing for class, and one more thing for main class. Remaining things main class. Okay. So we created a thread. Same like this, we'll create one more thread. We'll create one more thread, class, one more thread for what? Otherwise, we'll test up to this one, first of all. Main method we created a thread, right? We created a thread. So how to execute the thread? We have to create the object for that thread. What is the class name? Thread1. E1 is equals to new thread 1. Next, with thread1 object dot. What is the method name? Start is a method. When you call start method, thread T1 is equal to new thread. When you call T1 dot start method, it is going to call this thread. In this thread, which method is going to be input? Run method is going to be input. So in case application, what is the output you will get here? See, observe here. Java C test.java. What is saying? A non-static variable cannot be referenced from a static context. Previously we created this class as an inner class. Now we created as a separate class we created. Do you know, right, what is the difference between inner class and separate class? So previously I created this class inside the thread test class I created. But now what we did? We separated that one from which class? Thread test class. Okay. So Java C threads test. Execute this one. Java thread test. Observe what is the output we got here. First 199, 198. Then after that we got from 0 to 1. What is the difference here? First this main method logic is executed. Then after that thread logic is executed. Right? So we'll do one thing. This one also will create a separate thread. This logic also will create a separate thread will create. So let us take, we'll create one more class we'll create. Let us take class thread 2, we created a separate thread we created. Whatever the logic written here, we'll remove the logic and we'll put the logic in the thread, meaning printing in reverse order from 198 to 100. So this is a separate thread, right? Now we'll create an object. For this thread 2 also we'll create an object. So we created 2 separate threads we created. Okay. So Java C threads test.java, Java space thread test. Is there any change in the output? No No change, right? Is there any change? So, Java C, threads test.java. So Java C, threads test, Java space, threads test. See the output. First we got from 0 to 47 we got. Then after that 199 to 177 we got. Then after that again the first thread is taken 48 to 52. Again the next thread 2 is taken, thread 1, thread 2, thread 1, thread 2. So at a time these are the two individual process. These are the two individual process in a single code, and there is no any dependencies. Each one is working on individually. These are performing. Okay. Have you understand? So previously, if you don't use threads, it will execute one after another. It will execute one after another. First, we'll get from 0 to 100. After that, we'll get from 199 to 100. But we are using threads here. Thread in the sense, the individual process. There is no any dependency between the other process. So that's why parallel is executed. Let us take the process. The first thread 1 process is executed. But before going to complete that one, thread 2 is taken. Then after that, thread 1. Then after that, thread 2. So this is one way of creating a thread. This is one way of creating a thread. So what is another way? You can use by extending a thread class, or the second thing is you can use implements runnable keyword here. Extends thread class, implements runnable. So here also thread 2 extends. You can use thread or you can use implements runnable. You can extend thread or you can implements runnable. The same method we had to use. Which method? One method only we had to use. So here what is saying? Cannot find a symbol t1.start and t2.start is saying. Variable type is thread. So what is the message? Variable t1 of type is thread 1 and variable t2 of type thread 2 is C. Even if you take thread or if you take runnable, in both cases we have to provide the implementation for run method only. It is not giving any error in the threads class. It is not giving any error in the threads class. Where it is giving error? It is giving the error at T1 and T2. Okay. So here, in place of this thread 1, we had to take the runnable here. We had to take what? The runnable. Runnable is an interface, you cannot create an object. R is equals to Let me try. So 1 second. So previously we used the thread class, now we use the runnable. In case of runnable is an interface, right? Runnable is an interface. So we can take subclass instances taken into the superclass reference. So here, this thread one is a subclass of which class? Runnable class. Right? You return the logic like that. Thread one implements runnable or not? Thread one implements runnable. What is the meaning of that statement? Runnable is a superclass. It's an interface. Runnable is a superclass. Let us take thread one is an. So subclass instance is taken into superclass reference. Okay. But directly you cannot call that run1.start method. But you have to convert the runnable object into thread. You have to convert that runnable object into thread. So that's why we converted thread. Even is equal to new thread of runnable object. Next we can call the start. So these are the two ways to create a thread. By extending a thread class, you can create a thread, or by implementing runnable, you can create a thread. Okay. So few more things we have to discuss, like what is synchronization. There is a concept called synchronization, right? One of the access modifier called synchronized. Okay. So where you will get a requirement of using this synchronized modifier. So where you get a requirement of using this synchronized modifier we will discuss. And there is one more modifier called volatile. This volatile concept also comes in multi-threading concept. Okay. So these two topics we will discuss in the next session, where we apply the synchronization concept. And synchronization is not for the variables. Synchronization concept is for methods. For variables we will apply this volatile. This volatile is not for methods. This volatile concept is for variables. These two topics we have to discuss in the multi-threading concept. So tomorrow we will complete these two topics in the multi-threading concept. Then we will close the collections. Okay. So just we started, right? I hope tomorrow session we will close the collections. So next, within 2 to 3 days, we will close POJO. Anything is missed? Anything is not covered? If you are feeling anything is not covered, just tell me so that I will explain. As per my experience, accent is the maximum. Not missing. Few things you miss like arrays concept, control plus statements. All those things you learn. There is a periods of Java, there is advantage of Java. So after this core Java, actually I plan to start advanced Java. But so our faculty is already teaching PHP. So if I start Java Web Technologies, obviously the Java Web Technology is going to dominate PHP. Correct? Java is more powerful than the PHP. That's why the faculty is requested. Don't tell you the faculty.